Shocker, wasn't it, in Baku on Sunday? With us to discuss this fractious falling out in F1 is Indian driver and F1 pundit Karun Chandhok, who joins us via Skype from Beaconsfield in England. Karun, thank you so much for your time. You were present at the race on Sunday. Were you as stunned as the rest of the world by what transpired?
Yeah, to be honest, it was a little bit confusing because, those aren't the sort of actions you expect from a four-time world champion. And it's not the sort of stuff we normally see by two leaders of the race. And I think, to be honest, it was a bit clumsy from Sebastian. I think he got completely wrong-footed by Lewis. He thought Lewis was going to accelerate, and he didn't. I don't think Lewis did anything wrong at all under the safety car. I think he was just going slower than Sebastian expected. And then in the heat of the moment, the red mist came down, and I think Sebastian meant to sort of pull up alongside and gesticulate and show his disapproval. And in the end, he made a mistake by driving into Lewis. So it was all a bit clumsy, and it was all unnecessary, to be honest.
There was an element of deliberation, is what many thought, in the actions of Sebastian Vettel. Just to break it down a little more technically to our viewers, Karun, because, I mean, a lot of this is not that well known to us watching from the distance that we do. As someone who has a better idea of the sport and what goes on in a driver's mind while you are there, how grave, according to you, was Vettel's fault, and how justified is Lewis Hamilton in calling for a greater punishment and saying what has been meted out is a bit of a joke?
Well, let's break it down. First of all, I don't think Sebastian's move was premeditated, but it was deliberate. I think we have to be very clear that they're two separate things. I don't think he had planned, 30 seconds in advance to drive into Lewis. I think it was a heat of the moment reaction. Of course, it was deliberate. Nobody else was driving that car. It was just him. As I think, at the end of the day, it was under the safety car. They were going quite slowly. The risk of danger was quite low. If you consider the accident that happened, or the incident, it wasn't a big accident. It was a small incident of their wheel bagging, contrast with if they were racing under full green flag conditions, as we've seen a lot of other incidents with Michael Schumacher, for example, and Jacques Villeneuve. Senna and Prost, you mentioned earlier, those were full-blown high-speed accidents which were extremely dangerous. This wasn't particularly dangerous. It was just clumsy and unnecessary. I think, you have to understand, drivers will do everything to gain an advantage. Lewis Hamilton is an extremely intelligent human being and an extremely intelligent racing driver. And he knew exactly what he was doing when he made those comments about he believes the action deserves a bigger penalty, etc., because he knows he's going to be in the thick of this World Championship battle with Sebastian, and anything he can do to disadvantage Sebastian will help him in the championship battle. But I think it's an issue that's been dealt with. Sebastian was given a penalty in the race. He was given effectively 30-second penalty, 10-second stop go, 20-second in the pit lane. So that put him from what should have been a win down to fourth place. I think it was unfortunate for Lewis that he had an issue with his headrest, and that cost him the win. That ultimately is what actually cost Lewis the victory. And I think that's why he's more frustrated, because if he had won the race and Sebastian had been penalized down to fifth, it would have been matter over, matter closed. I think the fact that he had a win taken away from him as well means that the whole issue is rumbled on.
Would you say, Karun, that Vettel's reputation is also not doing him any favours when it comes to the judgment the world is forming on what happened on Sunday? He has been known as a bad boy in F1 circuits. His brazen style, a somewhat brash approach to the game is known to many. And I remember a few years back, he also had unparliamentary words for Narayan Karthikeyan back in the day. So do you think that is something which is affecting his case as far as the judgment of people involved is concerned?
Yeah, I think so. I think you made a very valid point. Sebastian had many years where he was up alongside Mark Webber, and there was certainly a lot of instances there where there's a degree of petulance in the way that Sebastian dealt with things, but I think certainly his popularity. I mean, I went to a number of races. I remember when I was obviously racing in 2010, and I was in the Grand Prix in Turkey where he and Mark Webber hit each other. And for many races after that, the crowd, whenever Seb would win, the crowd would come to the podium and start booing him. And he went through a lot of years where the crowd were quite hostile towards him. But he's very, he seems almost immune to that. He's very focused on himself and his job and his results. And the perception of the outside world, he seems pretty immune to it. To be honest, in the same way that Michael Schumacher was. Michael had, of course, millions and millions of fans, but he also had a lot of critics around the world for some of his actions. But Sebastian, obviously Michael was his hero, and he was in some ways Michael's protege. And I think in this way, he's actually quite similar to Michael. They don't seem to care so much about the outside world. They're very focused on their job and their performances.
In a very warped way, Karun, the occurrence from Sunday is adding to the intrigue of what has been a pretty fascinating F1 season, one of the more riveting ones in recent times, I'm sure you'll agree. Now, I know this is not the way the bosses would ideally want it, but they're probably happy that this is in some warped way, like I said, helping their pursuit of making F1 great again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, controversy is good for sport. I think it's good for the drama. It's good for the show. It's for everybody apart from Lewis and Sebastian. I think it's been great. I think it's it's what the adds to. You need that. You need that masala factor to make the show interesting again. And I think all in all, 2017 has been fantastic. We have 2 teams fighting for the World Championship. We have 2, as you mentioned, 2 drivers who've won 7 world titles between them. History in 50 years' time will recognize them as 2 of the all-time greats. And I think it's been fantastic. And certainly all of this stuff that's gone on is great for the show.
Yes, an incredible season it is turning out to be, Karun Chandhok. Let's hope there are not so many controversies, but nonetheless, we are primed for a great finish to the season given the events of the last few weeks.